Madhukar, we'll now sort of move to you. If you could sort of give your perspectives from an indirect tax, GST, etc. perspective, especially from a new modern reforms, etc. That'll be great.
Yeah, I would do that. Thanks, Vikram, and I think you put the background of where the government is coming from. As far as the indirect tax is concerned, one separate issue which comes up is the involvement of the state. In the past, we had a VAT regime, and now we have the state GST. The involvement at the time of drafting of the GST was, I think, one of the problem areas which came up due to the fact that the government decided to follow a consensus-based approach. While it looks very unique, and it was unique, and a lot of time proudly people are offering it, but I think around 75% of the problems which came in GST came from the state demands, because the laws in the state were not so developed. No VAT law was very developed. Central excise was developed, customs was developed, but VAT law was not developed. Even the officers did not know. Especially the taxing of services, they did not know. That was one of the challenges which the government has now, because they have already considered it so. Okay. I don't know where I am. Yeah. No, I had a few more, but since I don't know where I am. Shall I stand up? It becomes easy for me.
Sure.
Of course, I've got a small broken hand also. Just give me a moment, let me get back to, yeah. The other issue which the government has got a challenge is that we have, I think in the last 5 years, moved into being a little more socialistic. And while employment has been what you can say, a place which has been looked at, many tall claims have been made. The real fact is that unemployment is a very, very serious problem, and worsening, I think, with time. The fact which Mr. PVS also mentioned, that change always brings about a lot of difficulty. And when change is there is an imperative in any corporate that there is a change management system which takes place for 2-3 years. Here we had an abrupt introduction of GST. Neither the officers were ready or even expecting, and there was not much of awareness created. And even today, I think one of the major reasons why GST is failing is the lack of awareness of the smaller practitioners, MSMEs, which is a reality. And that may be also because of the same reason which you mentioned. 675 notifications, 400 circulars, maybe 1,000 FAQs, press releases, confused everybody out of even the few tens or 20,000 people who entered to become experts at GST. Now it has gone off. Maybe 1,000 are left now. So everybody is waiting for the law to stabilize, then they will specialize. That has become the issue. I think these were the reform areas which I thought I would talk about. And the ones in green, I think, are the ones which are the positive side of it. So I possibly will take the... Yeah, this I finished, and yeah. I think this is something which is required. Broad basing of taxation, I think, is one of the imperatives in India. Such a large population and such a small fragment of us contributing. And if you look at GST, when it came, the increase in the number of registrations was phenomenal. 75% extra registrations took place. But after another 1.5 years, if I look at 1.5 years, what growth took place, it may be 10%. Why? It is because the old regime or the old possibilities of working in the grey market have increased. This is a reality, and this was also foretold by many of us from the professional institutes. The lack of B2C focus. You just keep on focusing on B2B, and B2C has become the place where the maximum leakage is happening. And I'm sure manufacturing industries here would agree. that when you sell a product for 60 rupees, finally a consumer is buying it at 100. So what happens to the 40 rupees? If that is under composition scheme of 1%, you collect 4% instead of 18% of 40. There is where the real leakage in India is happening today. There is also the point of this IT infrastructure. So much of delayed, everything gets delayed, then it's extended. And also, many of the thought processes were pushed through in the IT. I remember maybe in 2016 when I met the Finance Minister as well as the Revenue Secretary, Mr. Adia, I told him that GST is bound to fail because of unregistered supplier thought process and matching. And today also, unregistered has been left, jettisoned, and again reintroduced only for the real estate, and matching is still a dilemma. So both of them. And we had given them solutions actually, how to do it. And I start with the big guys, slowly come down. Over a period of time, it can certainly succeed. Not subsuming of the stamp duties and petroleum products certainly is, again, something outside the system which ensures that cascading also continues. The main problem which I think is there is this issue of turnover splitting. See, the small and unorganized sector in India is numerous. You have crores of them, or millions of them at least. And they are busy breaking up their turnover. 40 lakhs. When I reach 35 lakhs, I have one more PAN number and I have one more enterprise. If I'm a composition dealer, 150 lakhs I get. I can, within my small family of 6, I can have 64 registrations, which means that I can do 100 crores of turnover at 1% of tax. And do I have to be registered differently? No. All 100 registrations can be in my one place. This was all taken care in the excise regime, but it was not carried forward into the next regime. There was something called clubbing of turnover, which was there. It is possible for the government even today. I think they should do it very soon, but I don't know. Again, they will be possibly, it should not be near the election, so they should do it as soon as possible. Reduction in the tax rate, certainly I agree with Srinivasan. Most of it should be done. Unfortunately, we do have 40% below the poverty line, so you have to be a little careful in seeing that the merit rates are very carefully chosen, so that it doesn't affect the poor of the country. I think all of these are controllable, whatever I talked about. If I look at the next stage, this was something which I think is, we have been screaming for, at least I have been speaking about this for the last 10, 15 years. In fact, if you go to the Indirect Tax Committee's website of ICAI, way back in 2012, I put the first point was make laws, indirect tax in India simple, fair and transparent. And GST was supposed to take care of that, but it didn't happen so. What is the problem here? The problem is that we have got the drafters of the law are the tax collectors of the country. Unfortunately, the track record of VAT officers, all of you know, was that maybe around 90% of them were dependent on bribes for their livelihood. If I go to the service tax, maybe 60%. And if I go to excise, maybe over 25-30%. So you had a large number of people who were eating the country, and they are the people who draft the laws. Obviously, they leave enough room for themselves in every law. And possibly they wish that GST fails. This is my personal understanding, that they would wish that GST fails. Other than the few honest officers, there are good officers, very dedicated and honest officers. That's for sure. What is it that we can do now? Now that we already have this very complicated GST law, maybe subject-wise consolidated circular should be put in place. All the circulars are there. They are also drawing, withdrawing, putting a circular, then withdrawing it, clarifying the circular. All this should be removed. One circular, subject-wise, it can be 40 pages, it can be 100 pages. Even that is good, so that people become certain about what the law says. Maybe GST law needs to be revisited. In this regard, I will differ with PVS that this law is pretty bad. And it has forgotten all the objectives which they started with. The brief slide I showed you, what was the objective of GST when it came, and what finally it is doing. Many of them, if you start looking at each of them, you will find 10 defects in each. So maybe it's time to scrap this old law and go for something which is fresh and new. Of course, the thought about having a few rates, maybe 3, merit, demerit, and average rate. Of course, exemptions will be there in India, and that has to continue. One other very important aspect, I think, is that there is a need to involve people from industry who have proved themselves. On the stage itself, possibly we have the people who can guide India better than many of the bureaucrats. Why are they not taking them? Why are they not taking people from industry? Why are they not taking people who are experts at the subject, who have grounding? I must have served over 5,000 clients in my life. So I've seen the smallest to the biggest. I know what is the problem. So I can possibly be a better advisor to see that wrong things do not happen and the law comes out fairly. I think why the taxpayer should be looked at as a thief. That is, I think, the underlying thing. You look at all the present laws which are coming, everywhere it is looked as if the taxpayer is waiting to thieve and cheat, which is not the truth. The most of the tax is collected only from the people who are not doing it. It is not the tax evader who is paying any tax at all. He is finding his ways and means. When he gets caught, he comes to us, and whatever he has got caught with gets offered for penalty, etc. So I think this is something very important. And IT infrastructure, I would only look at the reform what I would look at is every change in the software should be signed off by an industry group and a professional institute. Every change before it is implemented. Because every time after implementation, when you do something, it is only a repair of a faulty infrastructure, and it doesn't become good. One more thing I think very important is there has to be a massive IT education program for the MSMEs and also the small and medium practitioners. If I look at the indirect tax, we have more than 8 lakh practitioners in India. And among them, the professionals may be only 1.5 lakhs. So who is going to educate them? What are they doing today? They think that if they have uploaded the return, the compliance is over. But what is uploaded in the return obviously is not that accurate or correct. And what is going to happen tomorrow is all that is going to land back with the MSME with interest and penalties. How will he afford it? He doesn't have the margins for it. It's not like income tax where out of 100 rupees of my income, I save 20 rupees. My income is 50 rupees, my GST liability is 200. So what am I going to do? How am I going to pay it if at all I make a mistake? I think there is very, very imperative lead on IT. Of course, if it is with GST with IT, it is wonderful. GST also has to be taught, which I think there is a grave need to do that. If I look at the achievements in cost of compliance, government's cost of compliance has come down dramatically. And if I look at the larger SSEs, they are also very happy with the GST because all these multiple laws are gone, multiple authorities are gone. But what about the MSME? He had only 1 or 2 authorities, now it has become 1, very complicated, and no consultants to advise. He goes to the department officers say, look at the law. When are the department officers going to know GST? How long can you and me wait for the department officer to get educated? In the initial stages, 60,000 of them got educated or at least trained. But what happened after that? Now you go to any office of the, whether the center or the state, you don't get the answers. Maybe there are 1 or 2 guys who know, but the rest of them don't know. So what happens is that the smaller SSEs are at, they're just helpless. They just don't know what to do. Good thing which has happened is this tax terrorism, thanks to infrastructure, IT being used, large amount of the corruption has come down. In the corruption in indirect tax, you can't believe, as per my personal estimate, before GST came was around 3 to 4 lakh crores. The corruption I'm talking about. That means what was the revenue? Maybe 10 lakh crores at least.
That's the revenue foregone.
Yeah, that is the revenue foregone. So when GST came, I thought that part of that revenue should have come every year. But we have not seen that. We have not seen, even the collective collections are not coming. So where is it gone? Does the government not know? They do know, but these are the areas where possibly they have to look at leakages. As I said, very important, officers' education should be linked to exam. You have advanced ruling authorities who are the JCs. In many of the states, I have been very critical on this, and sometimes the commissioner says, you are being unduly rude to us, and how can you say we don't know anything? I said, sir, you tell me, do you have an idea about intermediary in services? He doesn't know. I said, this is the reason. And I can ask you 20 questions, you will not answer even one of them. And you are the advanced ruling authority. So what type of ruling you will give when you don't know the law at all? They should have an exam. At least the people who adjudicate and are in appellate positions, and also the advanced ruling. The advanced ruling is only going to help us. The consultants and the lawyers who are there in this. Initially we thought we'll, bring down our office by around 25%. Now we are thinking of expanding our office by 100%. Thanks to the type of laws and advanced rulings which are coming. If you look at the last one, the seamless credit, this was what was promised. They said that credit will flow seamlessly. But the first knock came when stamp duty was not subsumed. Then 5 major petroleum products which go into everything was not subsumed. They removed 40% of the credit went off there. And what about the restrictions? Blocked credits. I don't understand this philosophy of blocked credits at all. You spend it for business, you should be eligible for credit. Finished. You look at the UAE law. We wrote a book on UAE law. The Institute of Chartered Accountants, when UAE law came, we did it in 40 days. Our own background material took 8 months. 60 people across India worked and we made a background material. UAE law, 6 people worked and it was over in 1 month. And no issues at all. There's nothing in that law at all. Such a simple law. Of course, there were some flaws in the law. We didn't give all recommendation because that law is in a different country. We didn't make recommendation. So the point is, just allow all business related expenditure. Get out this entire ITC. You say personal and business. Over. Close. If there are exempted, give a simple formula. You should look at the formula of that exempted, how you reverse the credit. Create massive amount of litigation which is only useful for neither the SSE nor the government gets the money. The tax lawyers and chartered accountants will get the money. These cumbersome calculations sometimes nobody can understand, can be manipulated also, let me tell you. And many people do. They keep the formula intact, only the Excels are manipulated, which nobody can find out when you give a copious amount of things. People who want to get away can simply get away by simple things. So with that, I think I've covered some of the thought processes, and maybe the last point which I wanted to say was that relook at the high rates of taxation. You look at some items like, pan masala or gutka, either you ban them, get them out of the country, or put them at the normal rate. What is happening is that you put a rate of 88%, 188%. Where is it going to be collected? 90% obviously off record. Does the government not know? They know it, but they possibly are keeping that aside as, maybe at the time of election it comes in useful. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.